Well, this has been fun. It's enjoyable to me. I just feel like there's this sort of like blanket in a sense of innocence and imagination and reawakening and really restoration to wonder. I think we've seen it happen.
All right, where are the zingers? The zingers for Bill. I'm just kidding. Does anyone have anything? And it's okay. Are you guys just
Last minute
happy?
thoughts and questions. Yes. It's a good time to do it.
Protests.
I'll go first until Richard can. Richard and I both yeah. Okay, so my question is on sort of like a practical level. Wonder is one of those things that everybody has a definition for. And so because we do, a lot of times we miss out on wonder. And so on a practical level, if you were talking to somebody who absolutely knew nothing about wonder, what would you tell them to do? Or how would you tell them to somehow begin to look for that or whatever? I'm just kind of curious.
That's a really cool question. I like that.
Thanks, Jessica.
The first thing that comes to mind is it's about wondering. It's about the questions. It's about the curiosity. So I would encourage them to just, what are things that catch your curiosity? And that's where you're going to feel that feeling of awe or that wonder as things are unwrapped. That's probably a pretty simple answer, but that's kind of what comes to mind right now.
Well, the great thing about curiosity is that it brings questions, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're not there to necessarily get the totality of everything, but to go deeper and deeper into the next thing. Because, if you're a little child, well, why this? Well, why this? Well, why this? And that can drive you crazy in the car. But, right? So it brings us deeper and deeper. And if people, there's some people that get so jaded that they're just curious about nothing, right? Just like, been there, life is bland, life is flat, right? Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, right? But we can start to open that up as we start to ask questions. The other thing that curiosity does is that it reduces levels of fear. So sometimes people are kind of, because they're wanting to control their environment for whatever reason, that they're just kind of on lockdown, right? But when we start to get curious about things instead of worrying about how things could go wrong, like there's 5 zillion things this could turn out really well, right? And you're connected with that God, so start to ask questions, right? And then as you engage with God in it, he'll lead you into questions. And what's funny about God, God's actually very funny, but usually when you ask him a question, he asks you a question back. Who's experienced this other than me? Yes. Okay, right? Okay. And because he's wanting you to start to mind, this is you engaging with him, right? And having that dialogue and that communion. And it's a doorway into opening up to something that is greater or beautiful, mysterious, greater than the sum of its parts. And as we continue to walk in that, it starts to open something up in us.
So part of the reason I'm asking is there's a whole portion of the church that just doesn't walk in wonder. And if we're going to be, I don't know, wonder bearers,
wow.
How do we
need to pause
yeah, there you
and
go.
Rejoice in that word. That is so good.
How do we help them into that? Because there's just people who don't see wonder anymore. I mean, they don't even look at the sky and go, "Oh, look, that's a dinosaur up there." And so I'm kind of curious, like Bill, I know you go into churches where some of these, people are, like Catherine is saying, locked down or tapped down or whatever. How do you approach them to bring something like this?
I always like to ask the question of people without asking this question. When's the last time you were fascinated?
Oh, that's good. Okay.
When's the last time you were fascinated? And the thing I love to preach most is just fascination with Jesus. To remain fascinated with Jesus, without even using that term. It's like let's just gaze at him in all of his incredible facets. And I watch him. I watch people's eyes fill with tears. And people come up afterwards, go, "I'm crying. I don't even know why. I don't know what's going on right now." You watch people kind of reawaken to it. When's the last time you were fascinated into joy, fascinated into awe? And we really have, in a sense, I would say, we have over distracted or overstimulated ourselves out of fascination. And I noticed it when we lived next to Disney World. Tracy and I passes. We go to the park, and she calls herself a beauty addict. And so she goes and she's like, "Oh, everything beautiful is all around here. It's like everything's beautiful, right?" And so I love to see the world through her eyes. It's amazing to me. But we like to go at the end of the day to go watch the fireworks. They call it the Kiss Goodnight, which is such a cool title. And so 65,000 people sit around, and watch this fireworks show set to music, and all this crazy cool stuff is happening. It really is awesome, no matter how many times you see it. I started noticing that people weren't watching it; they were watching it through their phones.
Yeah.
And the other thing I started noticing is that kids weren't watching it; they were playing games. And I started thinking back to, when I was a kid, it's like your entire life would be wrapped up in like, you have a one-shot time to see this thing right here, and this may be the most amazing thing your eyes ever see. And I started watching as thousands and thousands of people are just checking the box. Oh, we got to attend this because this is sort of part of the experience, part of the day. But they miss out on the experience.
Right.
I think a lot of people approach church that way. They approach gatherings and worship that way. It's a checking of the box. And so, I find like every moment of gathering to be it's an opportunity to be fascinated back into awe again. Tracy and I were walking down to breakfast this morning at Glen Eyrie. My wife's very childlike, not childish, but childlike. And I'm so delighted by that. It's so funny. If I start to grow up a little bit too much, she just kind of yanks me back into the sandbox again. And we're walking, and a bird comes. I don't know what it was, but it was a magpie. Or I don't know if that's the first word that came to my mind. A bird came and landed on this fence post as we were walking by it. I would have just walked by. It's a bird, right? And she stops, and I hear her. I hear her go, "Oh my goodness, what are you?" And the bird turns toward her, and then she cheeps a little bit, and she talks back. And I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, I'm watching my wife having a conversation with a bird. This is amazing. She was just delighted. And I thought it was, at first, I kind of went, oh wait, we're talking about restored wonder and childlikeness here. I realize I walk by wonder all the time. And so there's an intentionality to being fascinated. A lot of times I think we wait for something to just reach up and fascinate us. But you can choose to be fascinated. I ask people, when's the last time you were fascinated into awe or into joy? And if it's been a while, then I would encourage you to make the choice to find something fascinating. And you don't have to look far. I think practicing daily, looking for something to fascinate you, not to distract you, but to fascinate you, and not to get into doom scrolling on Instagram, with one video after another. May or may not be real, who knows? But just put everything down and just look at the world around you and go, okay, whether it's this person or this situation, this overheard conversation, that cup of coffee, or this flower, or that bird that just landed on the fence post, what can I engage with in terms of fascination right now? And there's something that awakens in my heart every time I purposely do that. My wife pulls me into it. It's very cool. What are you? She does that with more than just birds. She saw a vacuum cleaner one time that she thought looked cute. And she was like, oh, what are you? And then she bought it and named it. And now she gets it. And I hear her talking to the vacuum cleaner while she's like It's just, this is my life.
So, Vicki, one step, I think, in the idea of wonder bearers is, I think that's why the Lord captured me so strongly on this Isaiah 9:6 thing. If Jesus simply is absolute wonder, then if we'll settle that in our heart, we'll convey that to people, and we can trust that he will be himself to them. And if he's wonder, there'll be an occasion. You know, how should they believe unless they preach? How can you preach if you don't believe it? That kind of thing.
And that's really good. And if you purpose in your heart to get fascinated with the things, the simplicity of the things around you, being fascinated with Jesus won't be a stretch.
So I had a response to Vicky's question that brings in a bunch of cool stuff. And that is, you bring it to very simple things, the simplicity of wonder, and that can be done whether you're a believer or not. And that brings in God in a cool way by you can simply ask God, what is that? And listen. And that can bring wonder for a believer that has lost it. Yeah. And there can bring not only wonder, but the voice of God for non-believers, which is pretty cool.
And one of the things that I wanted to add too is getting around people who are captivated by things. Yeah. It pulls you into the sandbox, right? So, right? I mean, evil associations corrupt good manners, morals, and character. Well, wondrous associations, right, bring wonder, right? These are what we hang around and we can help cultivate in one another. Yeah. You know, my husband, Brian, who's been at various times on Zoom, and, you know, he's retired recently, so things have slowed down. And he's appreciating so many things, so he's constantly grabbing it. Look at this bird, look at this whatever. It's adorable because he's this you know, a 65-year-old little boy that is like, wow. And so this is fun. And you guys can have your own little thing, you know, pull people into wonder, right? You get to pull them.
And notice children. Yeah. Notice children. I'm in a conference one time, and high-powered global speaker, I've always held up in great esteem and admired. I'm like, I want to hear a word from the Lord. And I'm sitting there, and I got my notes. I'm ready to take notes, and I'm listening. This kid's sitting next to me, coloring and drawing. And he reaches up, and, and I'm sitting in the speaker VIP section. And so I'm thinking, who let this kid in here? Whose kid is this? Like it certainly isn't their kid. Who in the world? I'm sure it's somebody's kid, but I keep going, shh, like that, and I'm listening because I don't want to miss the word of the Lord, right? But this kid's relentless, just grabbing her like this. And finally, I'm, just to essentially shut him up, I turned and went, yeah. And he's like, God gave me a picture for you, and hands me a drawing that essentially in the drawing was the answer to my question. And I felt like the Lord said, you thought I was going to talk through that guy to you. No, I hide my voice in strange places, unexpected places. So now I pay real close attention to children, because they don't have filters.
Another thing, Ronnie, that question, not only can you ask God, but what was in your heart? So let's say you see something. Doesn't even matter what it is. You mentioned tears, What was in your heart when you created this? I can see some stuff, but if you can show me what you see, what you had in your heart, I'll explore that. And you will. You will. Yeah.
Bill, that last word that you said before you started talking again, you said being fascinated with Jesus. That was like of the Spirit, because what I heard was not just being fascinated about Jesus with Jesus, but being fascinated with Jesus. Yes. And so I go, oh my gosh, God is still fascinated about his own creation. when he looks at it, it's not something he just created and you guys go enjoy that. He's like wrapped up in the fascination, and if we can join in with that, we see it as we're just delighted. And you know, I'm kind of a outdoor travel addict, I guess you call me, but I love going to national parks and stuff. And I was trying to give somebody a picture of this one area, and this guy next to me goes, "Oh yeah, I've done that, been there, done that," you know. And immediately inside, I thought, you didn't go there with Jesus. Yeah. I mean, I actually thought that, because when I go to these places, something happens to me where I can go to the same place over and over and over, because it's just the wonder again. So with Jesus, the fascination with Jesus.
I mean, you know, there's nobody more childlike than Jesus. You know, children are vulnerable, and Jesus appeared so vulnerable that Satan actually thought he could take over heaven.
Yeah.
So how childlike is he? And children love repetition. It's the do it again, Dad. Like you throw them up in the air and they're like, do it again. You're like, oh my gosh, my arms are about to fall off. If you want to know how childlike, you know, Jesus is, look at sunrises and sunsets. It's like the whole earth going, do it again. Let's do it. It's like he builds repetition into things, that amazing things. Like, we'll do this all again tomorrow. You know, we're gonna make more clouds tomorrow. It'll be amazing. You know, my grandfather loved to. He lived down in Deming, New Mexico, in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, and he would say, "Oh, it's that time of year, Billy. Let's go." And we would walk miles. Which to me, I'm a little kid. I'm like, "What are we doing?" He always had a dress shirt and a fedora, for God knows what reason, and he's walking out in the desert, right, with his hiking stick, and we go out and up over the hills and everything. We're away from where you can't see roads or houses or anything, because there was a field of flowers out here that bloomed every year. Nobody ever comes out and sees them. He's like, the Lord makes this for us to see. It's worth the walk to go and look at what he's made. We'd pick a couple of flowers and we'd study them and get the magnifying glass out. I'm thinking, wow. So I really carry that sense of, you know, that I always want to keep that sense of, I mean, wait, stop a second, look around and go, you're so childlike. You know, you're going to do this seasons thing all over again. We're going to have snow again. We're going to have spring again. Yeah. And you know what's going to happen when it's over? It's going to happen again. It's like, he's such a child. And I love that. That just delights me.
Maybe one of the realities too is, how do you know a field of flowers isolated out in a desert outside Deming is worth walking to until you do?
Yeah. Larry, you kept this phrase a lot to be, I'm trying to think of the context, but into Jesus versus to Jesus. Yeah. So I'm going back and forth trying to feel that. Could you just kind of expound on that?
Sure. And the primary contrast is in versus into. And the place that's the most often, in my opinion, mistranslated. In other words, where the word ace, which means into or can mean unto, is most often translated in, which is the word ain, is when it's modifying belief or something like that. And so in that one passage I mentioned to you, they asked, what must we do to work the works of God? And he said, this is the work of God, that you believe ace, Jesus, the one he sent. That's what he said, the one he sent. And so it's the difference in, I believe in Jesus. That's a declaration that is of my mental state, my intellectual state, but it does nothing to put me in relationship with Jesus. It's a statement of my belief from a distance. He said to do the work of God is to believe into the one he sent. That means it takes me, my belief now is taking me from outside of him to being in him. So where in is really powerful is in like John 14:20. Those are ain, they're not ace. And you can understand it as being appropriate when Jesus said, in that day you will know that I am in my Father. He didn't need to get into his Father. He is in his Father. And because of the work of the Spirit, in that day, you will also know that I am in you, and you are in me. So it's a fulfillment of the destination. But the way in to being in is to go into. Now, that word is also used in just a lot of normal grammar, and it's translated accurately almost 100% of the time throughout most New Testaments. And like they went into the temple, or Jesus went into the house, or they went in, that type of thing, into the water or into the pool. And then there's certainly appropriate things like the sound in the trumpet or the water in the bowl. That states something there. But if you'll like on your phone, get into that interlineal type thing and start checking out instances where faith or belief or something like that is a part of the sentence. So in other words, this is the work that you would believe in Jesus. It's not in, almost ever. It's almost always into. And again, same situation. Not the simplicity that we hold at a distance in Christ, in the passage I brought up. It's that the simplicity and purity puts us into. It's the way into Christ. Does that make sense? It is. It's a preposition. And there's another one that's another Greek word that's really important to keep the way it is, and that's ek. That means out of, because you can't come out of something unless you've been in it. and so a lot of the ministry that we try to produce without being in Jesus by virtue of believing into him, and that's kind of a little bit behind my answer to Vicky. One of the things we can do is we can literally settle the issue in our mind that he is wonderful. And once we are into that aspect of him, intimately in it, then it can come out of it. And I think God will use it that way. So yeah, that's it. But the easiest way to start checking it is start finding verses where faith or belief or something like that is sometimes even actions, like obedient actions. It'll say faith in Jesus or believe in Jesus, or look at it, and I would venture to say probably 75% of the time it actually is ice meaning into.
We actually do have a question on Zoom.
Yeah, Jen.
I had this thought when we were talking about fascination, and I'm just curious to say it out loud. So I was remembering that verse where it said, and I might misquote it by mistake, but where like the Lord turns just a little bit, and then it's, I think, the angels that are caught up in like another facet of the Lord. And then he turns again, and it's like awe again. They see another facet of the Lord. And I've recently been thinking about how long eternity is, and how big our Lord is, and how fascinated we get to be for all of eternity on this amazing Father that we have. And then I was remembering that message you gave around Easter, and the perspective of like what the Father was looking at on the cross, rather than turning his face away from the Lord, but seeing something from a perspective of his child. And I started wondering, I wonder if he gets to be fascinated with us for all of eternity, like we get to be fascinated with him for all of eternity.
I think one of the coolest things about eternity is the learning aspect that I think is a gift. It's built into it, and you see that a lot of people have preached and taught that the minute that we're in the presence of the Lord, we just know everything. And I'm not 100% sure that's the case. Matter of fact, I'm 100% sure it's not the case, because John is standing in the throne room of God. He has no idea what's going on. Isaiah is in the throne room of God. No, like, why is that seraphim picking up that coal? Why are you flying down here toward my mouth? Like, what is even happening right now? And so people within the context of heaven and eternity have questions. And that tells me that God has designed us to be eternal learners, eternal students. And how boring it would be to suddenly know everything, and to come to the end. People would say, like, wait, did we step out of time? Well, then everything is one eternal now. And that's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, but I think the more you see God actually experience progression, but where we're kind of stuck on a linear progression of we've been in the past, we're in the present, but we're moving toward the future. You also see God experience progression as well, but he also has the capacity to move in any direction he wants to. So he can zap from point A to point B to point C to anywhere. You like rewind the whole thing, do it all. It's like, so I think that's one of the aspects that we're going to encounter in time. So to be outside of time, we say that phrase, it's not necessarily accurate. It just means that we're no longer bound by time. In other words, time, which is why I think that in eternity, and here's a point of fascination that's so cool. In eternity, I think what we're going to see every moment of past failure that we think cannot be altered, able to actually be changed. And I think you can actually bear that out in Scripture. You see where you remember here one example. Sarah, Abraham's wife, heard the word of the Lord and she laughed. Essentially laughed at God, and then came up with the worst idea in human history. And then in Hebrews 11, in the Hall of Fame of Faith, Sarah is mentioned. And the implication is that she heard the word of the Lord and believed God. There's nothing about her laughter or mockery or anything that's in there. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, one of two things is happening here. Either the writer of Hebrews is lying or putting spin on the story, or, and I think this is the accurate reflection, the writer of Hebrews is giving us a peek behind the veil to see how God sees our story. And so I feel like there's, this is why people will say, I can't change the past. All things are possible. So is it possible that within the context of eternity that we actually get to see the story that was intended for us to live? And I think this is part of the apokatastasis, the restoration of all things. If we could take and within time put an indelible scar on the calendar of our life that God cannot redeem, restore, or erase, that would make time stronger than the God that invented it. And he's the Lord of time. So I think this is where you start to begin to realize, oh, wait a minute. Not only am I going to learn things in the future for all of eternity, my eyes are continually be filled with awe and wonder at the unfolding of the glory of God and what he's created for us. But I'm also going to have the capacity to, along with the Lord of time, redeem every moment that I ever thought was lost or destroyed. He's that redemptive. I'm fairly convinced.
You know how much more fun heaven would be with that?
Well, yeah. Okay. So we've been given stewardship over the cosmos, right? I write this. It's like the last chapter of the Sound of Your Blood book. I think it is that one or the Fire. I can't remember where I put it, but we've been given authority over the cosmos. This is our starter node. This singular dot in the middle of all of the cosmos is our starter point to learn how to steward the creation that we've been given. But God didn't just create trillions of planets and just leave them out there outside of our reach. So how do we get there? Well, if Philip could zap from one zip code to another, I think it's not a stretch to believe that eventually when we discover how much power and authority we have over this physical environment as the manifestation of the sons of God comes about, that we start realizing, wait a minute, I got about 500,000 planets to shape. the atmosphere of. Like the entirety of this cosmos is meant to be under our stewardship. How do we steward the cosmos from one ball of mud?
To Christoform.
Right. So when people go, what are we going to be doing in eternity? I think when we finally figure out how to steward every creation of God in the known universe, then the first second of eternity will have passed. So we got a lot to do. Right? So when people talk about end times, it makes me laugh because I'm like, end times? We haven't even started the beginning. I mean, we're still rolling the credits on the front of this movie. We haven't even gotten into the meat of the plot yet. You know? Anyway.
Thanks, that's so good. I think you might have actually started answering a bit of my question, but you were talking before about this journey we go on with the Lord from servanthood to sonship to the bride union. I feel like I've heard so much teaching on, being a servant and being a son. I would just love for all of you to share, what does it look like when we're really operating in a bridal dimension, and what it looks like when we're stepping into that as the body of Christ? Because I think you kind of started alluding to a lot of that, but I would just love to see, like, what is that shift we can expect in mindsets, in miracles and manifestations in relationship. Like, what does that look like practically? I just love some thoughts on that.
I'll just give a short one, and that is, Brian Guerin has a great ministry called Bridal Glory, which is so funny because he's the manliest man you've ever seen in your entire life. I mean, he grows a beard in like 5 minutes. It's unbelievable. And he's a deep voice. And what's your ministry, Brian? Bridal Glory. It's like, dude, whoa. But Brian get up, and when he has this awareness, when he gets the awareness of the bride being the bride, I mean, it stuns him speechless. And so I've seen Brian in meetings get up, come into a conference and get up and go, oh God, oh God, oh God, just 3 times, and the whole room just get bam, crash, and 2,000 people are laid out on the floor, and he has nothing else to say. So on one hand, it's the revelation of the bliss of bridal union with God. There's mutual love that happens there. But everything within the context of physicality is a type and a shadow of a greater spiritual reality. So what's going on? There's a mutual choosing. I think the 3 most important words that any human being can ever hear are not "I love you." They're "I choose you." And that's what you're saying at an altar is, I choose you. I choose you back. And so there's this, and I think that's beautiful. But beyond that, within the context of a marriage union, with intimacy produces life. And in the physicality of it, we understand how that works physically, but it's a type and a shadow of a greater spiritual reality that we have with God. Intimacy produces life. We also understand that intimacy is fun. And so it's not a drudgery to live in union with Christ in a way that produces life. It is an adventure, and it's a blissed out, fun adventure. And so I would say, and maybe that's not been people's experience within the context of their physical life and marriage and things, but think about the ideal of how it's supposed to be. There's a union and intimacy that produces life and expands that life and carries the legacy on to generations. And bridal glory with God is a revelation of a chosenness that we have that unveils an assignment, both a right and a responsibility that we carry, that within this intimacy with the Lord, that is fun, that is just in joy beyond joys, that there is a life that is going to come out of this that is going to transcend even my own. And I think that's just delightful to me. And I'm always asking the Lord to show me, like, what is the life that you and I are going to produce today? How are we going, what's going to happen in this moment where life is going to be birthed and produced, and that kind of thing, and nurtured and grow. And so I think a lot of ministries have been born out of that bridal union. as opposed to just coming up with a ministry idea. It's birthed from a place of intimacy with God. 40 years, right? 40 years ago, and now what are you dealing with? You're dealing with something that has grown up into maturity and is now on its own. And so, that's one of the things the Lord is doing in us. He is drawing us into an intimacy that produces life, and not just ministries. It's entrepreneurship, it's business ideas, it's inventions. It's all these things that really answer the questions that the world is asking. And so, so much can come out of that bridal revelation, And then sometimes it's just simply being with your person. And so when we hear the Lord say, I want to be with you, it's like, wait, what? Yeah, it's like, you're my person. Oh, so we're just together. Yeah. And sometimes that's all you need to be. It's Larry's thing from this morning. We're out here. What do you want to show me? No, I just want to experience it with you. Just being with my person,
Yeah, a good place to really start to connect with that is Song of Songs is a really good one, because there's something in that turning towards him in that way that you're swept up. There's part of the passage is suddenly I was transported into the house of wine, right? Right? This intoxicating place with him, right? Out of all fruitfulness. And one of the gorgeous things he talks about is that you are fairer, you are more beautiful among all women, all women, my spouse. And you think, well, that's every one of us, because we're so uniquely crafted as his bride. That's like, right? He is blown. This is where he's ravished with our beauty. He's enthralled. He's intoxicated. He's undone by one link of your necklace, by one flash of your eyes, right? You've captured my heart, my sister, my bride. So there's a brotherhood component. There's a bride component. Yeah. And so this is a sweeping away. It's the invitation into this place of intimacy, where it's just pure enjoyment for the sake of enjoyment. But out of that, as a byproduct, life comes, because you're united with him. You're united with him. And it's interesting. What's interesting about it is God, God is self-sufficient in some ways, but he chooses not to procreate outside himself. In other words, there's a partnership that happens in that revelation that he's not going to do on his own, right? Because there's this invitation, and it's and all are invited, but it's a very personal thing, but no one is not invited into that, because we are all his bride that he chose. And there's something about operating as a bride, as a wife, that is different from operating as a son, in that you're co-equal. He says, my equal, my bride. Like, dang, how did that happen? Right? How did that happen? Because that's how I made you, right? That's how I made you. And this is the truth of your being. And so when I look at you, I see myself, right? So we're all Christ, we're all God in our flavor, right? And he looks at us and he sees himself. And this is that rapt attention that goes on, because then you see yourself in his eyes, and that transforms you. But that unveils you. And what do you do with a bride? You unveil, right? So you take it from the place where I'm on my own and I'm just kind of engaged in doing my thing, and I'm coming from my Father's house per se, or whatever that is, to that place of, wow, I'm now unveiled in the fullness, and we are one. It's another revelation of union that leads into deeper revelation of union, right?
Yeah, I love that question. Once again, like, these are amazing questions. And so I was really trying to process that, because it's like, man, like, it's such a progression that, where do I identify that this crossed from a sonship to that? Which is of what part? And that there's just like, there's a melding. But kind of bouncing off of what I'm hearing here, because I can relate to that. Okay, yes, it is where that intimacy starts to go deeper, where you just want to just be with him. You just want to be with him. You want to have encounters with him where he may show up and he's like, I could take you somewhere. I just want you to hold me. I just want to smell you. I want to feel your heartbeat. That's actually the encounter I had this morning when I could go into the tears and the worlds, and I only went into one because he goes, where do you want to go next? I said, I want to go back to where we were at the beginning, and you were just holding me. And what I've always loved is when two people are close together. When you're holding a child, their heartbeat starts to sync with your heartbeat. So when you are in his arms and you're being held by him, your heartbeat syncs with his heartbeat. And there is something that changes in you, and you're just in that moment becoming more and more like him, melding into him, that intimacy, experiencing that safety, and being able to receive that you are beloved. And it's a different kind of way than when you're a child. When you know you're a son or a daughter, there is like, I remember how that felt, where it's like, wow, I'm loved and I'm accepted. But then it changed into something where it's like, wow, I'm beloved. I ravish your heart. And at first it was so hard to receive that. And then it started to get easier and easier. And then I was like, wow, you want me to respond back to this. When you come at me like that, you want me to respond back, and it is okay. Like the first time I responded by pulling back from him when I felt like it was very intimate. He stopped and he said to me, who told you that was not okay? And I thought, well, that kind of takes me back to something. So yeah, we literally are one. So that, like, and it just, man, it changed that, to be able to accept that and to be able to allow him to change me into something that could receive that. And then the creation, the response to you, when you step into that place as the bride, creation responds, and your heart for creation expands and opens up so much more, because that birthing, that life that is formed from that new understanding of that place of where you are with him, that does something in creation around you, and it more honestly does something in your heart for it. And then through that, there's a manifestation, but it's usually very gentle manifestations, at least that I've experienced so far, but I know they're going to get more and more intense. But yeah, and something that kind of comes to mind is even, and I'm just going to put this out there because I don't know if this is from stepping more into that place as accepting the bride, but I've had more experiences with him where in that, then I'm stepping into a place with creation where I'm in it. I'm one with it. And so that's an interesting thing too, because feeling it from a different place, how it sees its creator, I think there's something with that, and stepping. I don't really exactly know what that is, but I feel the intimacy, and that I can say is a mark of that brideship. And I'm excited because everything is a progression. So it's like, I think I only touched my toe on what this feels like, Lord. Like, so that's pretty amazing.
Creation knows who you are. This world, your dog staring at you from across the room is just waiting for you to get a clue. Your cat, I don't know about that, but I think your cat's just waiting for you to die. That's plotting my death. That's what he's doing. No, that's my thought. Anyway, but no, the Bible says that creation's waiting for us to get a clue. Creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. In other words, creation knows who we are. The creation is just waiting for us to know who we are. And I think one of the most amazing things you can do, go step out into creation and speak to creation and say, this may sound strange, but tell creation, I know who I am. I know I'm a child of God, and watch what happens.
Okay,
I'm just saying. I've never actually told a group of people to do this. This has only been in private conversations around my fire pit in my backyard. But go out into creation as you're walking along. When you see a living creature look at you, don't think about the size of its brain, the limits of its understanding, and whatnot. Announce, if you truly know who you are, just tell creation, I know who I am, and watch what happens. Watch how creation responds.
That's a cool takeaway. So I feel like I'm going to answer as an amateur and a learner, because it's a really, really good question. I don't doubt the progression at all. And one time we had a guy named Harold Eberly here, a friend of mine, and I was sitting about where you were sitting, actually, and I'd made him a big whiteboard, and he had illustrated things all out, and he marked off stuff on them like Harold does, and he had the wedding feast of the Lamb up there, and I go, oh. And I got the revelation that that's always been the end. That's always been the goal. The marriage feast of the Lamb is the culmination of all of creation and redemption. And so that means something to the heart of God. So the first thing I could say is that's the bridal glory and tasting it, touching it, doing something, participating in it, is closer to the fulfillment of all things that were there. And so you get a taste of the bigger picture. The second is something that it can add to union in the way we talk about union theologically. God said, it's not good for man to be alone. Jesus became a man, and therefore it's not good for him to be alone. Now, he was never alone, separated from the Father, but I think that's the place that the bride fulfills. It fulfills that eternal truth that it's not good for man to be alone. And we're supposed to do that. So I don't really know what that means, but it feels good. And then the next thing is, I think we see signs of the absence of bridal glory when we take good things or we do good things and they turn out kind of funky or tainted or something. And I'm reminded of the scripture where here, behold the bride, and she is adorned with the righteous deeds of the saints. How many righteous deeds of the saints are not an attractive adornment? And I think it's because we may in fact be doing them out of servant or even out of the potential pride there is in being a son. But the intimacy and all that, and everything else that was said here could be a sanctifying and a cleansing reality to those deeds. And then the last one is that it seems to me that even our witness of the gospel, even our invitation to a relationship with Christ in union, finds its best articulation, its best fulfillment, according to the end of Revelation, where it says, the Spirit and the bride say, come. And so maybe one reason that the proclamation of a message that is true is so ineffective from time to time is because it's not married with the idea of speaking it as a helpmeet, speaking it in union, speaking it as a bride. I don't know. That's what came to mind.
And one of the attributes of the bride and the feminine is the receptivity, is an exquisite receptivity that God as the word, the spermata, right, the logos, but the spermata is able to release into the seen realm and create. So there's a receptivity that's a whole nother level of receptiveness than, say, as a father and son, even an intimate union. And so, and this is, it's part of the mystery, right, of Christ in the church. But that whole picture is very, very real, because when there's not a bride to receive, the word goes almost like wasted, right? It falls on unreceptive ground. And so there's a receptivity and a trust, and then a co-receptive, because the wife as that thing has a level of influence and an inroad with her bridegroom, right? That is even, I think, greater than even a son. So this is why it's not the son and the spirit say come. It's the bride and the spirit, because her voice carries a place that no other voice does. Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be weird, and we might cut this out of the tape. Intimacy with a slave is having a relationship with a concubine. And I'm not suggesting that there's not genuine affection or intimacy in that, but it can't reach the pinnacle of what it's supposed to be. And, okay, intimacy with a son is weird. It's weird. It's missing something. That's not the center of the robustness of that relationship. So it's almost like the bridal glory is a place where other kinds of relationship and other kinds of intimacy can finally reach their fulfillment. I am way over my page.
If you think of each, actually, I mean, it works. If you think of each, and again, it's a circle, it's not so much a line, it's, in servanthood, you're doing things for the master. You're producing for him. In friendship, you're beginning to understand the heart. You may not necessarily work together, but you're spending time together, and there's a level of like heart connection that's being built. In sonship, it changes your identity. Now there's something implanted in you, and you realize, I carry the DNA of my father. Now it's changing me. In bridal intimacy, there's a place now where in that place of intimacy, you can begin to produce something together, right? I'm not just working for.
And the chosen thing you talked about.
Yeah.
That's another layer of it.
Now we're working together. And together we're producing something that has life on it. I'm not just working and then to present you my works. And then from there, the revelation of union, the body, redefines. It's like every time we get a fresh revelation of union, we go back and we reestablish all of these things. So for example, we don't leave servanthood behind in the kingdom. Once you move on into friendship, you establish servanthood, and it becomes like each one of these things is so vital and so important, not because of what it does for the Lord. It's what it does for us. It's part of our own formation. And on a simplistic level, what you could say is like servants invited into intimacy would be weird for servants. They would find it to be like, oh, that's strange, abusive. I can't, And so what the Lord, you see this with human history, God is, from generation to generation, God is inviting us closer. And we're like, no, I don't know, Like to Abraham, he's in the sky. Abraham was a sun worshiper. So God appears to him from that place. It's like you're distant and you're way up there. And little by little, though, with every generation, God's like, how close can I get to you before you're going to freak out? And finally in Christ, we've been drawn near and then brought into a new and living way. So it's not just him and us, but us into him. And now in that place of revelation of intimacy, it's like, oh, goodness, now we can come to an awareness. But it's what he's always wanted from the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Always wanted from the beginning.
That was what I saw in that time mark that culminated in the wedding feast of the Lamb.
Yeah. It's always been his desire. And you see it with Abraham, or you see it with Adam and Eve. You see it in God breathing life into Adam and then giving him the earth and then enjoying him in the cool of the day as if like we just have a relationship here. And then, now what happens when Jesus raises from the dead? Instead of raising from the dead and using it as an occasion for vengeance and revenge, He raises from the dead. And it's like, I want to hang out with somebody. Is there a fish fry going on? Can I go hang out on the beach with some friends?
Yeah.
Like zero interest in vengeance, people are like, what about the wrath of God? Like, look at the resurrection. That would have been the greatest occasion for the wrath of God. We absolutely would have no excuse at that point. You know, before I want to go and hang out with the saved, I'm going to go and like wipe out all these people that murdered me. And, you know, and in a sense, in doing that, blasphemed his very identity and his spirit, which would be like the unpardonable sin. But no, he has zero interest in doing any of that. All he wants to do is hang out with people who want to hang out with him. And so his desire for intimacy is invitational. It's not forced upon us, it's invitational. I heard somebody say the other day, inclusion is mandatory, participation is optional. Yeah.
It's a really precious question. Thank you.
This was fun. I enjoyed this.
Me too.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Me too. Thanks, Zion. Thanks, Scott.
Yes, thank you,
Everybody,
guys.
Greg.
Thank you.
Everybody
for
that's
sticking
been
with us.
working. You Zoomers. thank
Everybody
you for
on
being
Zoom,
with us.
thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you, Vicki. I don't know. Awesome. Well, are we done? Seems like it, right? Yeah.
Feels good.
It does. It feels good. Be blessed. And yes, yeah, Greg's gonna get them up for us on YouTube, and then if you need some other format for them, you can contact us in one way or another. We can help that happen. Thank you guys very much, and I strongly encourage you to. I want to give you permission to have expectation for wonder to be a more invasive part of your days and your weeks. Let it surprise you. Be surprised by it still, but don't consider it odd. Amen.